Hey guys, it's Alaija aka Kingdom Babe here, and welcome to Bible Study. So I've actually been thinking about this for a while now, and well, since I finished the Surviving Solitude series, I was just like,
I need something else to talk about.
and on Instagram, I usually go in on my post and I'd be having captions like this big. I'm like, man, if only I could say these things and make a video about it, and then it dawned on me, I can make a video about it. So that's what I decided to do. I don't want to call this a series, but I do want to make this a weekly thing, like a Bible study on, I don't know, every Wednesday. And so yeah, I really like this idea. And one of the other things I really like to do is talk about the Bible and Jesus and stuff like that. It just makes me really happy. It puts a song in my heart and a pep in my step, you know what I'm saying? So I really like this, and I hope you guys do too. So the name of the message for today is No Going Back. And the setting of the message is basically when the Israelites were in exile out of Egypt and in the wilderness on their way to the promised land. They experienced a very crazy series of events that lasted 40 years. And we all can look at the story and laugh or point and judge them and be like, are you dumb? Are you stupid? Are you dumb stupid? But the more I read this passage personally for myself, the more I realized that I literally am one of these Israelites. These Israelites that actually said they would rather go back to Egypt rather than go on to the promised land because they didn't like the place they were at. But the more I read these verses and the more I get into scripture, the more that this secret little mirror is being uncovered in the scripture. And the more the secret mirror is being uncovered, the more I see my own reflection in these very few verses. And I'm like, oh my gosh, wait a minute. That's me. That's how I be doing. Oh my goodness. And then I'm convicted because it's like, wow, I literally have the same moments that they had thousands of years ago, and I thought they were foolish for it. Sometimes our journey's a little bit longer or prolonged because of the choices we make, the steps we take. That's what I want to talk about today, is how we shouldn't be going back. I'm going to go ahead and read. I have some verses in the Bible that I want to quote. The key verses for today are in Numbers, and we are in Numbers chapter 13, verses 30 through 33, and then Numbers chapter 14, verse 4. I'm going to be reading the NIV version, so just a heads up. Let's get into the actual scripture. So starting in chapter 13, verse 30, it says, Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, We should go up and take possession of the land, for we certainly can do it. But the men who had gone up with him said, We can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, The land they explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there were of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. So you see right here that they're expressing their fear of going into the promised land because of the giants that are there. Nephilim, which were descendants of, I believe, Anak, if I'm saying that right. Anak, one or the other. And so they're allowing their fear to kind of make that decision for them whether or not they should do something or not. They're spreading a bad report and giving this negative report about the very place that they've been promised to go into. And so we're going to go on to chapter 14, and then it says, That night all the members of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, If only we had died in Egypt or in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt? And they said to each other, We should choose a leader and go back to Egypt. Now, first of all, no. So I have a side note. It says, When the chorus of despair went up, everyone joined in. Their greatest fears were being realized. Losing their perspective, the people were caught up in the emotion of the moment, forgetting what they knew about God's character. What if the people had spent as much energy moving forward as they did moving back? They could have enjoyed their land. Instead, they never even entered it. When a cry of despair goes up around you, consider the larger perspective before you join in. You have better ways to use your energy than to complain. These are good points that I had to actually put into my own lifestyle, because it's easy to complain. It's easy to get wrapped up in negativity around you. It's easy to get wrapped up in the negative opinions and start to believe somebody else's opinion as a fact, when in reality it's not a fact at all. It's just the way somebody else feels. Their emotions get the best of them, and you start to let that fear that they have grow and attach itself to you. So now here you are, also following after the people that are in fear of the thing that you probably even know yourself you shouldn't be. And so my note, I wrote down how we may be shocked by the Israelites' desire to go back to Egypt, and we think it's foolish, but oftentimes we have the same struggle. I have to admit and confess that I have had the same struggle as these Israelites. I might read the story and be like, this is completely stupid. Like, why would anybody want to go back to Pharaoh if, y'all actually cried out to God to have y'all delivered, and y'all couldn't wait to get out, and y'all went through all this great stuff, and now you want to go back to Egypt. But our fear does that to us. Our fear makes us paralyzed and crippled, and it doesn't allow us to move forward. And you can't operate in fear. That's just the thing that you shouldn't be doing. God didn't give us a spirit of fear at all. So when you start to feel that, just know that that is not of God, and that God did not give that spirit to you. Also, another point I made is that the Israelites lacked faith in God and let their challenges and fear keep them from their promise. So most times we have promises and blessings awaiting us, and it's our own lack of faith that keeps us from getting to those blessings or promises. And I also have this post on Instagram that says, God will keep your greatest blessing from the version of you that's not ready to receive it. And I feel like that is fact, especially right here. They wandered for 40 years. By the time they got out of Egypt, they were not ready to receive that blessing because their mindset was not there. Their mindset was not on the promise. Their mindset was on their struggle. It was on the wilderness and their current situation. They were not looking ahead to see what God was giving them or what he was doing for them. They were only looking at their current situation and thinking that that was their final destination. And we often have the tendency to do that. I have the tendency to do that. So I know that it's a normal thing that they probably felt. But again, we cannot let our current situations, no matter how bad it looks, no matter how difficult your circumstance, no matter how much you don't like it, no matter how much you're not where you want to be, you just got to be thankful that you're not where you used to be. So another key note that I wrote down is that they allowed their fear let them settle for less, or go back to the very thing that they asked to be delivered from. So I believe I said this before, but oftentimes we'll spend so many nights crying to God, so many nights asking for change, so many nights just wishing that things were better or that we could be elevated and we can just move forward. And once the progress starts to happen, once that moving forward starts to go into motion, we're like, no, I don't like this. No, I'll go back because I don't like this. This is not what I wanted. And you have to understand, your journey is not going to look like your final destination. So first of all, realize that when you ask God for something, be prepared to receive it. Secondly, when God starts to put that very prayer that you asked for into place in your life, remember that, again, your journey is not your final destination, and it's not going to look the same. Your journey is going to be the wilderness, but the promised land is going to look like something else. And oftentimes we will settle for less. We will go back to that ex. We will backslide in our old ways. We will go back to smoking, go back to drinking, go back to hanging around that old group of friends that we actually were saved from because they're manipulative, they were gossiping, and all these other things. And we decide to go back because being in that phase of growth where it's the separation, that weird uncomfortable phase is so uncomfortable that we get comfortable with the place of abuse, we get comfortable with the place of sin, we get comfortable with the place of idolatry and lust. You were saved, you were rescued. You have to remember that going back is not a choice. There is no going back. Do not let your fear make your decisions. Fear doesn't advance the kingdom. Your faith does. When you feel fear creeping in, acknowledge it and handle it. I think one of the things we do as human beings is that when we're afraid of something, sometimes we don't always admit, even to ourselves, that we're scared. We want to make it look like,
nah, let's just not do it because I don't feel like being bothered.
like, no, you're scared. And it's okay. Not saying that it's okay to live in fear, but it's okay to be human. This is something you're going to experience. You have to acknowledge it. When you ignore certain things or try to act like they're not there, that's when they have ruling over you. That's when they grow and they take root in your life. And instead of uprooting it, you're letting it go deeper. Don't allow your fear to go deeper. You have to acknowledge it and handle it immediately, right away, because if you don't, you become an Israelite in the wilderness, and you don't want to be that person. It's okay to experience fear, but it's not okay to live by fear and live in fear. You can't live by fear. You can't miss out opportunities because you're afraid of what could happen, what might happen. Because God did not give you that spirit, like I said before. So remember that. When you experience fear, acknowledge it. Say, yes, I am afraid, and handle it. Go to God in prayer. Speak wellness over yourself, and move forward. One of my favorite sayings, and another keynote that I wrote down, is that if God brought you to it, he will bring you through it. So if God brought you out of Egypt, Israelite, if he brought you out from under the hand of Pharaoh, if you've seen the miracles, if you've seen the plagues and how he saved you guys and how he covered you guys and how he passed over you guys and how he delivered you, if he delivered you from all of that and he brought you to this very spot in the wilderness, and it might not be to your liking, remember that he will bring you through this. He already said that the promised land was yours. You just have to have faith in God and trust that he will give it to you. Another thing, remember how God made a way for you before. The Israelites had plenty of testimonies to reflect on. Oftentimes we see each new challenge, but we forget each testimony, each time God has saved us before in our past, each time God has cleansed us and saved us from sin, each time God has brought us through a hard time and a hardship that we went through. And we forget these things when we're facing other challenges, but that is your ammunition, that is your backup, that is your armor. You have to put on the armor of God. You have to remember that God has saved you before. And if he did it before, he will do it again. And lastly, I just want to encourage you guys to operate in the power of God instead of your own strength. Our strength is not the most stable. It's not the most secure. No matter how hard you try, it's really hard to keep your strength up on your own. You cannot do anything on your own. You need God by your side each and every time you go through a new thing. So operate in God's strength, operate in God's power. Most of the time we try to handle our situations and go up against our troubles and struggles by ourselves, and we don't even need to do that. We don't need to do this by ourselves. God clearly says that he will go with us, he will fight for us, and that he will not forsake us, he will never leave us. We need to start putting that into play and practice and know that, hey, if I can't do it, God will. There will be a time where you are in the wilderness and you're going to have to reflect on the goodness of God, how he brought you out, how he saved you before. There are going to be hard times and struggles and troubles in your life that you're going to need to lean on God instead of your own understanding, instead of your own power, instead of trying to do it your own way. God is moving forward. God is doing a new thing in us. If he brought us from something, that's great. But there is no reason why we should be trying to go back to the thing that we asked God to deliver us from. We're not going back to Pharaoh. We're going to our promised land. And that's where we all should be wanting to go. No matter how heavy the struggle, no matter how hard the challenge, no matter how difficult life seems or may be for you right now, just realize and remember that God is doing something bigger and God is doing something greater, and going back is not where your blessings are. Your blessings are in your future. Your future is bright. Trust and believe. I hope this little bit of a Bible study helped you guys out. I know that I might even go back to this topic because there's so many other parts of the story that I actually love reading about and reflecting on, and it helps me in my life. So maybe I'll do a second part next week, but then again, maybe I'll start a new topic, or maybe I'll come back to this another time. But thank you so much for joining this Bible study with me. I love you guys so much. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this video and push the notification bell so you'll be notified when I post new content. I love you guys so much, and until my next video, peace.